Well, it's a question everybody always loves to ask, a question everybody always wants to talk about, and I suppose it's inevitable when we cover recruiting like we do at Panther-Lair.com. You follow these guys all coming through high school and up through the years, and then they visit and they commit and they sign, and you're all excited about them. You want to see them play. You can't wait to see them get on the field, and then they get to Pitt, and you don't see them for a couple of years because they redshirt and they develop and they take their time. So the question every year is which freshmen are going to get on the field, which guys are going to help. And as we move through this, second full week of training camp, we move through, 2 weeks of camp now as we're coming up to it. Camp started 2 weeks ago tomorrow. We're getting a clearer and clearer picture of which guys could help the team this year, which freshmen could get out there, potentially, burn their red shirts, play in more than 4 games during the regular season and be a part of this roster and be sophomores next year, still having that red shirt in hand. So who are the main guys we're watching? I got 4 I'm pretty confident about are not going to redshirt, but there's always, you always like to do it as a top 5, right? 5 guys that are not going to redshirt. So I'm adding a 5th guy in. I'm not as sure that he's not going to redshirt, but he's worth talking about nonetheless because I think we're going to see him on the field. At least I would put him on the field this season. We'll see if the coaches agree with me, and then a few other freshmen that are worth noting. But at least 4 guys that I'm pretty confident are going to play for Pitt this season and maybe play significant roles. It could be a variety of types of roles, but I think play a significant role this season, or at least enough to get on the field and play a lot and not redshirt. So who are the freshmen we're watching? Who are the guys we think are going to play for Pitt this season? Let's talk about it here on the Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I know we've talked about this freshman topic before. I think we did it in a mailbag a month or 2 ago, and so we've definitely covered it, but we haven't talked about it really during camp. I've written a little bit about it here and there on Panther-Lair.com, so if you've been following along there shouldn't be any surprises for you today. But if you haven't been following along, well, we're going to bring you up to speed on which freshmen are going to help this team in 2025. Of course, the place I would always point you to for all the latest Pitt info, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, is right there, Panther-Lair.com, the Pitt side of the 24/7 Sports Network. We've got all things Pitt covered for you. Pitt football, Pitt basketball, Pitt recruiting, Pitt transfers, Pitt everything, all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards to talk to other Pitt fans all day, every day. Pitt fans hanging out on the message boards talking about Pitt sports at Panther-Lair.com. It's the place to go if you want to get all the Pitt info. And, of course, the place, if you want to get all the Pitt video content, is right here at YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe to YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and that way you don't miss anything we do. These daily Morning Pitt videos, Monday through Friday, or weekly live show every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. We'll have that tomorrow night. Post-game shows, press conferences, practice highlights, interviews, all those different things. You can find it at Panther-Lair.com, so make sure you check that out. All right, freshmen who are going to play. And I'm going to go in order of most likely to least likely, I guess is the order that I'm going to go. I've got 4 guys that I'm pretty sure are not going to redshirt, and a 5th guy who I think there's a chance he might play enough not to redshirt. We'll see kind of what develops there. And so I'm going to list these guys in order most likely to redshirt and, on down, right? 1 through 5, with 1 being or I should say least likely to redshirt. 1 through 5, with 1 being the least likely to redshirt, and then working our way down through the group. Now, like I say, the first 4 guys I'm going to name, I don't expect any of them to redshirt. 5th guy, a little more on the fence, but we'll go in order like that. And the number 1 freshman at the top of the list, who, barring some kind of injury between now and his 4th appearance, which should be in the 4th game, is Ja'Kirian Turner, the freshman running back from Florida. Guy who enrolled in January. He's been here since then, went through spring camp. An explosive offensive weapon in high school, had more than, almost 1,100 yards as a senior, offensive yards between rushing and receiving. He scored, he averaged more than 7 yards per carry. And the thing we've heard about Ja'Kirian Turner since he arrived is just how explosive he is. Now, last week, I asked Desmond Reed if he was faster than Ja'Kirian Turner, and he laughed. And of course, Des would say no one's faster than him. And I'm to be honest, I'm not going to bet against him. Unless you put, depending on who you put him in a race against, there aren't many people I would bet on being faster than Desmond Reed. But Ja'Kirian Turner, by all accounts, is right up there. And if he's not the fastest guy on the team, he's the second fastest behind Des Reed. I mean, like, you're talking about that level of elite speed on this roster. And Ja'Kirian Turner, as a true freshman, is bringing that speed as much as anybody else. And I think you're going to see it in action this year. And this is probably one of the more obvious ones. I think everybody would assume that Ja'Kirian Turner is going to play just because of what the depth situation is at running back, where they have Desmond Reed, they have Juelz Goff, and that's pretty much it for upperclassmen. Derek Davis is off the table. And there you go. It's Desmond Reed, it's Juelz Goff. They brought in the transfer Jalen Williams from Western Carolina. They have the converted wide receiver walk-on transfer Justin Cook. But in terms of guys, in terms of scholarship running backs who played and practiced in spring camp, it's Desmond Reed, Juelz Goff, Ja'Kirian Turner. And I think Turner has a really high ceiling. And has a lot of potential and a whole lot of upside. Now, I think Reed is still going to be your number one back. I think Goff will be your number two back. But I think Ja'Kirian Turner is going to play. I think he's going to play a lot. I think he's going to make a lot of plays, both in the rushing and receiving game. I think he's got talent in both of those areas. And I think he's going to use that speed to be a pretty impactful player for Pitt this season. I would expect him to play in every game, provided that he's healthy, that you don't run into any issues there. And we've talked enough about Desmond Reed and the health of running backs that I don't necessarily think Reed or Goff or Turner or any of these guys are injury prone, but they play a position that's injury prone. And so I think you're going to see all three of those guys probably every game, that they're healthy again. And if there's a game that Reed has to miss or a game that Goff has to miss, well, that's just all that more opportunity and snaps and carries that'll be out there for Turner. I think you'll see Ja'Kirian Turner all season. Again, provided he stays healthy between now and then, and I think he'll be a big-time player. And I would put him at the top of the list of guys I am most confident about when it comes to not redshirting in 2025. The next guy I'm most confident about is somebody else we've talked about a lot, and I think I just wrote about it yesterday, and I've written about him a lot all summer and kind of dating back to spring camp because he was here in the spring, and that's the safety Josh Garrier. And Josh Garrier, I think, I don't even get there's a few of these freshmen, and I'll say this about another guy too when I get to him, that I don't even really share the level of praise that I've heard about Josh Garrier. I haven't shared a lot of it publicly because it almost feels like hyperbole when people start talking about Josh Garrier and what he's done in spring camp and training camp so far, what he's shown, how good he's been, and the kind of playmaker he's been at safety for Pitt. And it's remarkable, and we've said this a few times when talking about Josh Garrier and his situation in the safety depth chart and everything. I mean, it's remarkable because safety is I would say a pretty strong, maybe even a really strong position for Pitt in 2025 with, Javon McIntyre and Cruz Brookins, with Jesse Anderson and Allen Bryant and Kavir Baines-Marquez. They've got good players and good depth. I mean, I just named 5 underclassmen, and yet Garrier is out there. He's getting work with the second team. He's on a lot of the first team special teams units. I really don't see Josh Garrier taking a redshirt this year as long as he's healthy. And I would put him right behind Turner. And the only reason I put him behind Turner in terms of likelihood of, not redshirting is just because running back is not nearly as deep as safety. And so, the coaches might find a way to keep Garrier from redshirt or from burning that red shirt, keep him to 4 games or fewer, and then play him in the bowl game and everything like that, just to try to preserve that year. Maybe because they've got that depth at safety, but I just don't see it happening. I think they are high enough on him that they will get him out there. And look, he was outstanding in high school. I mean, just offensively, he had more than 1,800 offensive yards. I think he was close to 2,000 all-purpose yards. He had, averaged 12 yards per carry on some handoffs, more than 20 yards per catch on receptions. He had, 800, return yards. Or he had 1,800 all-purpose yards total. So, just a phenomenal athlete, a great football player, good football IQ, and has a chance to be one of the best safeties that I think we've seen at Pitt in the Narduzzi era. He might not be that this year because he's a freshman, but A year from now, 2 years from now, I think he's got a chance to be one of the best. And like I said, I think he'll be one of those guys they have to fight every offseason to hold on to, unless they can get him under a multi-year contract and hold on to him that way. But I think Josh Garrier is going to be a guy, I would put him right behind Ja'Karian Turner, but not by much. Another guy I feel pretty confident is going to play a lot this year, and he's been talked about a few times recently, is Tony Kinsler, the wide receiver, freshman. He had, I think, over the last 2 seasons, more than 2,000 receiving yards and 28 receiving touchdowns in the last 2 years combined, his final 2 years of high school. I mean, he is an explosive playmaker, another guy who enrolled in the spring, so he's got that leg up. He's been learning the offense, and he knows what to do and everything like that. And we've heard his name keep coming up. And I felt all along like there was a pretty good chance that one of those freshman receivers, either Tony Kinsler or Bryce Yates or Cameron Sapp, they all enrolled in the spring. And I thought there was a decent chance at least one of those guys would play enough to burn his red shirt. I kind of thought that even before Andy Jean left. Remember the transfer from Florida who came in for the spring semester and then went back into the transfer portal? And once that happened, there was even more room there. And we've seen Zion Fowler-El emerge. Tyreek Robinson is out there having a good camp. Deuce Spann, obviously the transfer from Florida State, not to mention, I think your top 3 receivers right now, it's Kenny Johnson, it's Raphael Williams, and it's Blue Hicks. But the 3 spots behind them, I think Zion Fowler-El is battling for one. I think Deuce Spann is battling for one. I think Tony Kinsler is battling for one. In addition to Tyreek Robinson, I think Sincere Lee, as he continues to recover from his injury last year, gets closer to that group. But I think Kinsler's right in that group. And I think if a freshman can put himself in position to be a top 5, top 6 wide receiver on the depth chart, then I think he's probably going to play. And he's probably going to play a lot. I was just looking at snap counts for Pitt last season offensively. In terms of wide receivers, Raphael Williams, Konate Mumfield, Kenny Johnson, Sincere Lee all played more than 300 snaps. And throwing Dejon Reynolds, he played 285 snaps. Obviously Reynolds had limited playing time. Lee was limited only to the 10 games. But, how many guys is that? How many did I just name? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 receivers playing at least 285 snaps. Then you get down to Zion Fowler-El, had 77 snaps, and Tyreek Robinson had 30. I think there's going to be plenty of snaps to go around for Tony Kinsler, and I think particularly if he continues practicing well, and Pat Narduzzi praised him yesterday, if he continues practicing well, if he continues doing well in training camp, I think they'll get him out there. Like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he could jump over a guy like Deuce Spann, who obviously has size, and that's a big advantage for him over everyone else, but I don't know if he's necessarily consistent enough that you're going to, if you have someone else who's more consistent, then you'll go with him. And so, we'll see how that depth chart shakes out. But I think Tony Kinsler's got a real shot. I think he's got a great shot at getting on the field this season, potentially playing enough to burn his red shirt. And so I would put him 3rd on that list. My 4th guy is one who I think has sort of been steadily ascending, and that's Sean Lee, the cornerback, originally from Harrisburg, did a post-grad year at Milford Academy in last fall, and then he enrolled at Pitt in January. He's a guy, and I've talked about him a number of times, around recruiting, when he committed, or signing day, or whenever it might be. I like that he's a corner, but he's a guy who was a quarterback and do-everything weapon in high school. I like those guys who are do-everything weapons in high school. Those guys who you just put the ball in their hands because they're the best player on their team, usually at like a smaller school, like a Tyler Boyd, a Darrelle Revis. They might not be quarterbacks in high school or in college, but you got to put the ball in their hands because they're the best player on the field. And that's what they did with Sean Lee, and he very much produced. He had 2,200 passing yards, almost 1,500 rushing yards, combined 26 passing touchdowns, 19 rushing touchdowns. He had 4 interceptions on defense. He's just a great athlete and a really, really good football player. And you like those guys, and maybe it's because of Darrelle Revis, but you like putting those guys at corner. I think it's a good fit for guys who have sort of had that kind of role in high school, and they come over from being a quarterback. They've got a sense of what offense looks like. They have maybe a different sort of view on offense and how offenses move the ball. And I think it's just a good fit. Plus, he's a great athlete and a really good football player. Good IQ and all that stuff. So I think it's just such a good fit overall. And I think Sean Lee has been steadily climbing. And maybe up the depth chart, maybe not. I mean, I think you still have Tamon Lynam and Rashad Battle and Shadarian Harrison as your clear top 3 corners. And then you've got like Nigel Maynard and Davion Pritchard and Zion Ferguson, the transfer who came in from North Carolina. You've got some of these older guys. I mean, Ferguson's only a redshirt freshman, I think. So, I mean, not too old. But, you've got some of these sort of older guys, guys who have been around for a couple of years. But I think Sean Lee is putting himself right in that mix there. And what really stands out, and I noticed this yesterday at practice, and this is sometimes a good way to get a sense of which freshman will play, is who's getting used on those, first team special teams units, kick return, punt return, not necessarily as the returner, but as a blocker, as a guy who's part of that unit or on the coverage units. If you see a true freshman out there working with a first team special teams unit, there's probably a pretty good chance they're going to play. And they're going to, there's probably a pretty good chance that they've shown they can help the team. If in no other way than on special teams. And I think with Sean Lee, you'll see him get a lot of special teams play or get some special teams play. And potentially enough to burn that red shirt and then maybe rotate in with the defense. Like I say, I think there's a top 3 at corner, and then I'm not sure who shakes out. I think they like Nigel Maynard a lot. I think they like Davion Pritchard a lot. Obviously, they like Zion Ferguson, so why they brought him in. But I think Sean Lee is going to be in that mix. Maybe for some defensive snaps and potentially for a lot of special team snaps, and it could be enough to get him over that 4-game threshold to where he doesn't redshirt. And then the last guy, this is the one I'm probably least confident about. I know there's been a lot of talk about Torian Chester, the offensive lineman, and I think that's good, and I'm not going to rule out the possibility of him getting into games. I don't know if I can go so far as to pencil him into a 2-deep spot or enough snaps or enough appearances to burn his redshirt, barring injury to a number of guys on the offensive line. I think maybe the future is just really bright for Torian Chester, but a guy who I think he might sort of sneak on the field for some snaps in multiple games is the quarterback Mason Heinschel. And what's going to be really interesting to see when they go through particularly the Duquesne game and possibly even the Central Michigan game, what's going to be really interesting to see is when they get to that point where you change quarterbacks. And they should get to that point in at least the Duquesne game, if not the Central Michigan game as well. But you get to that point where you change quarterbacks. Who do they go with? I mean, I think Cole Gonzalez is probably going to be the number 2 quarterback for this team behind Eli Holstein this season. But Cole Gonzalez is not the future. Cole Gonzalez might be your backup this year, but he's not the future. And every snap you can get from Mason Heinschel, who is the future, either in 2026 or beyond, every snap you can get from Mason Heinschel is valuable. And I mean, the staff loves him. The staff thinks he's really good. I think his teammates believe in him. They think he's really good. This kid has a bright future. And so when you're playing Duquesne, when you're playing Central Michigan, you find yourself in a position to, maybe, be able to change quarterbacks, be able to go to a backup because you're ahead by enough or whatever it may be. Cole Gonzalez, sure, you want to get him comfortable in the offense and ready for the season in case you have to turn to him if something happens to Eli Holstein. The reality is Cole Gonzalez knows the offense. He should be comfortable running it because he played with, for Cade Bell at Western Carolina. Whereas every snap Mason Heinschel gets is going to be, his first snaps of his college career. And he's going to learn so much from those snaps and take so much from that playing time. Is he going to get enough playing time that he doesn't redshirt? Probably not. But I tell you, if it was me, I'd have him playing in the fourth quarter against Duquesne. I would have him playing in the fourth quarter against Central Michigan, provided you get an opportunity to do so. And I would try to get him snaps anywhere I could. And if he does okay with it, if he doesn't look completely lost, then if you reach a point in mid-October or mid-November or someplace and Eli Holstein has to come off the field, maybe you turn to the freshman. Maybe you give the freshman the opportunity, the guy who might have the highest ceiling out of any of them. Well, I mean, like, at least might have a higher ceiling than Cole Gonzalez, I should say. And I think Cole Gonzalez is a great backup. I think he's a great option to bring in. I think he fills out that quarterback room nicely. But I'm not ruling out the possibility of Mason Heinschel burning his red shirt this year. I think there's a path for it to happen. And personally, I might do it. But, I mean, that gets into a whole other conversation, which I think we talked about in a mailbag one time about, should you be more liberal with burning red shirts than maybe you were in the past? Is there less incentive to hold guys and develop guys, or try to develop guys, or save that year of eligibility? Or should, if you've got Sean Lee and he can help you on the kick coverage team, or you've got Josh Garrier and he can help you on punt return or whatever it might be, you get him out there. You play him. Red shirts be damned. And you only really redshirt linemen and sometimes quarterbacks. But I don't know. That's a philosophical question. I don't know what Pat Narduzzi. I think we've talked to Pat Narduzzi about it in the past. I don't think he said. I think he still would like to redshirt guys if he could. I think some of these guys, I think Turner, Kinsler, Gurrier, almost certainly not going to redshirt. Lee, probably not. Heinschel, who knows? Could be interesting. All right, thanks for tuning in today. Appreciate you watching these videos. Of course, hope your week got off to a great start yesterday, and hope you have a great Tuesday. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll be back for another Morning Pit tomorrow on the Morning Pit. Because it's the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.